Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is I Love Lucy and I am Lucy. Please do me a favor and like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. Meet Samuel Little, whom the FBI has confirmed to be one of the most prolific serial killers in U.S. history. Samuel Little has confessed to 93 murders, and the FBI crime analysts believe all of his confessions are credible. Law enforcement has been able to verify 50 confessions, with many more pending final confirmation. Little has confessed to strangling over 93 women between 1970 and 2005. Many of his victims' deaths, however, were originally ruled overdoses or attributed to accidental or undetermined causes. Some bodies were never found. For many years, Samuel Little believed he would not be caught because he thought no one was accounting for his victims, and even though he is already in prison, the FBI believes it is important to seek justice for each victim and to close every case possible. Now, if you have any information linked to these cases, please call the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI, and I will also include a link below. Now, you are going to meet 5 women that were strangled by Samuel Little, and these are unmatched confessions. And please note that Samuel Little's recollection of dates is not always accurate, and he is also sometimes struggling to remember the exact clothing worn by the victim. Any potential links should not be dismissed based on these 2 factors. Now, he does have a long rap sheet. You can see that he has been getting arrested since 1966, but he's now in custody, and he's talking and drawing pictures and just telling all the information. Check this story out.
Judy Samuel Little is a former boxer, now 79 years old and in custody in California. His claims are not new, but tonight the FBI is calling Little the worst U.S. serial killer ever, just based on the 50 murders they've been able to verify he committed. The I-Team has learned that number is expected to increase. Among those still being investigated are 2 in Illinois.
So I pulled her out of the car. She's too big for me to carry her, so I just pulled her out of the car and laid her on that trash that was lit there.
Samuel Little has told the FBI he strangled 93 women between 1970 and 2005. Some victims were originally ruled accidents, overdoses, or undetermined, and some bodies were never found. But tonight, an FBI forensic team has confirmed Little's confessions in 50 cases. In a grim and gruesome tally that even John Wayne Gacy never reached, Chicago's killer clown raped, tortured, and murdered 33 young men and boys. In Little's case, the number of 50 murders over time from coast to coast makes him the nation's worst serial killer ever. When Little was arrested in 2012 and started talking, the FBI suspected 36 murders might be linked to him, and then he provided information on 60, including Illinois, and the list of states was growing, a crime spree 40 years long. In many cases, Little sketched pictures of his victims, including this, a 26-year-old black female murdered in the late 70s in downstate Granite City, Illinois. A woman possibly called Joe. The FBI is still trying to authenticate the Granite City killing, as well as that of an East St. Louis, Illinois woman that Little says he killed in about the same time period. Little was once a competitive boxer, a skill he carried over to his criminal life, frequently punching victims unconscious, then strangling them, sometimes leaving no clear signs of a homicide, according to the FBI. Little isn't going anywhere. He's doing life in California for murdering 3 women there. And even as the FBI continues to match his confessions with dozens of unsolved murders elsewhere, perhaps the most disturbing reality is this. Federal law enforcement officials believe there are likely 100 serial killers out there at any time, having murdered multiple people, crimes not even connected, and the killers unknown.
Victim. Around 1971 or 72, Little met an attractive 18 to 19-year-old transgender black woman in Miami, Florida. He recalled her name as possibly being Mary Ann. He said that she was around 5'6" to 5'7" and about 140 pounds. He recalls meeting her at a bar known as the Pool or the Pool Palace, which was near 17th Avenue in Miami. A few days later, they met again at a bar in Overton where he offered to give her a ride home. He stated that she lived with several roommates, and once they arrived at the home, one of the roommates wanted Marianne to get shaving cream. So her and Sam returned to the car, a gold four-door Pontiac Le Mans. He drove Marianne north on Highway 27 and killed her on a driveway, possibly near a sugarcane field. He then drove further down Highway 27 into the Everglades and turned down a dirt road that led to a river or a swamp. He dragged her body about 200 yards into thick, muddy water, and he does not know or believe that if the body was ever found. Victim. Little said he encountered a black female in a transient area of Little Rock, Arkansas between 1992 and 94. He remembered it was cold and possibly snowing when they met. He described her as 24 years old, between 5'5" and 5'7", and about 200 pounds. He thinks that her name may have been Ruth. Little stayed with her off and on for about 3 days, and he reportedly shoplifted with her. Once they shoplifted, they sold the stolen merchandise, and he remembers being arrested for shoplifting in a North Little Rock Kroger grocery store, and the records did indicate that he was in fact arrested April 20th of 94. According to Little, he was released about 3 hours later, and when he returned to his vehicle, Ruth was sleeping inside. He first drove the woman to meet her boyfriend, a man called Bear, and then drove her back to her residence. He returned the following day and drove with her towards Benton or Bentonville, Arkansas. When they were outside of Little Rock, he drove down a dirt road and strangled her. He placed her body in a pile of branches and old corn stalks near a cornfield. And he also remembered that Ruth's mother lived in North Little Rock as well. Victim. Sometime in 1994, possibly in the summertime, Little was driving his Lincoln Continental Mark III from Lorain, Ohio to Cincinnati, Ohio. While en route, he met a 25-year-old white female outside of a strip club. He remembers her as being about 5'7", 130 to 170 pounds. He describes her as having short blonde hair and blue eyes with a hippie appearance. She approached him and requested a ride to Miami, Florida, saying that her mother lived there. He said that he and the woman drove south on Interstate 75. When they reached Cincinnati, the two of them spent time downtown on Vine Street. They continued driving toward the river into northern Kentucky. Little described driving to a hilly area not far from I-75. He drove up a small dirt road to the top of a little round hill where he strangled the woman in the back seat of his car. He then left her body on the top of the hill. Victim. Sometime in 1993, Little was driving in a 1978 yellow Cadillac Eldorado to Los Angeles when he met a black woman on Owens Avenue and Jackson Street in Las Vegas, Nevada. He described her as being a thin, dark-skinned woman about 40 years old, 5'5", 100 to 120 pounds. Little believed the woman had naturally short hair, but wore a long-haired wig as depicted in the drawing. He remembered the woman pointing out her son, which was a black male who was about 19 to 23 years old. He confessed to taking her to a motel room where he strangled her, placed her in the trunk of his car, drove her to the outskirts of Las Vegas, pulled to a remote road, and threw her body down a slope. He then threw her clothes further down the road, and it's highly likely that her body was never found. Victim. Sometime in 1982, possibly in the autumn, Little met a black woman in New Orleans. He described the woman as being about 30 to 40 years old, 5'8" to 5'9", weighing about 160 pounds. With honey blonde colored brown skin and short hair, he remembers that she was wearing a pretty dress with buttons on the front. He said that they met in a club where she was attending a birthday party with a group of friends and one of her two sisters. He left with the woman in his vehicle, a Lincoln Continental Mark III, and the woman told Little that she lived with her mother, who was sickly or possibly invalid. She also gave Little the keys to her house. He drove the woman to the woods exit off of I-10, where he turned down a dirt road along the canal that was being dredged. They exited his car. Then Little pulled the woman towards the canal, where he killed her and left her body. Afterwards, he drove back to the motel where he was staying. Now here's a look at several sketches of the victims. Like I said, a lot of them have not been identified, and this is not all the women. But my question is, what makes a person so dark inside? He felt like these women didn't matter. Drugs, prostitution. I guess he felt like he could take advantage of the situation of somebody who was already at their lowest point. What gave him the right to take a life for his own selfish needs? 93 strangulations. He was getting enjoyment. Enjoyment from what? Watching someone die? What makes a person, or what a person grows up to do something like this? And then he's explaining and drawing, and he's just describing it like he talking about a football game. He's in prison for the rest of his life. But is that enough justice? 93 women in his one life. He's still living, he's still breathing, he's still talking. He's still getting satisfaction from this. And his name will forever ring because of what he's done. And how could families not continue to look for their loved ones? With so much technology out there, you would think that most of the women would have been identified. But it just goes to show you the world we're living in. A sad situation. You don't even miss your loved one. Look at all these women.